Sini Anderson, great to have you on Finn's Revolution on WUSB Stony Brook. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Finn. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you there. And you're in California right now, am I right?
Yes, I'm in Los Angeles, where it's very warm.
Well, today we had a little snow here in New York, but, we'll get through it.
Well, I actually missed that. So, although, yeah, people probably don't want to hear me complain about 85 degrees. So.
Exactly correct. All right, so you came out with just last year a fantastic film called The Punk Singer about one of my favorites and one of our listeners' favorites, Kathleen Hanna. And what can you tell us about, well, let's just do a little background on Kathleen first. Tell us about some of her, tell us what you know about her early life.
Kathleen Hanna is a musician, activist, artist, feminist, kind of radical, who actually means a lot to a lot of people. She's just done a fantastic job through her art, inspiring people and captivating them. She's an incredible performer. She started off in her first band, Bikini Kill, in Olympia in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. And this was right around the time that the beginning of the Riot movement started, which was kind of the beginning of Thirdwave feminism. And it made a significant impact, at least on culture, and we're still seeing kind of benefits of the art that was being made during that time period of the Riot Grrrl movement. Kathleen continued to perform with Bikini Kill for 7 years, and then took a little hiatus and did a project called The Jewelry Ruin, or actually just Jewelry Ruin, which was an amazing solo album that she made under an assumed name, just to get away from some of the baggage that she was carrying with her from Bikini Kill. She did that for a little while, and then she did a band called La Tigra. And, she's just one of these performers and artists that is kind of unstoppable. It kind of doesn't matter what roadblocks that she runs into. She seems to find a way to incorporate the roadblock into her work, tell the truth, put it out there, and it ends up inspiring people. So she's a pretty amazing personality and a great artist, and a perfect subject for a documentary. So.
Absolutely perfect. And she did start off as a spoken word performer originally, right? And then kind of somebody told her, you want to get all this stuff out, you want people to actually come and see you, get into a band, and that's when she started Bikini Kill.
Yeah, one of her heroes, Kathy Acker, to the film is dedicated, just kind of said, don't do spoken word. If you want to reach people, start a band. And Kathleen took that advice pretty seriously and promptly started a band.
Yeah, and Bikini Kill, of course, a very seminal band at a certain time, coming out of Washington, all around the time Nirvana was coming up and all that. And Bikini Kill, just a band very much, very unique, very much by a certain perspective, And as is pointed out in the film, and has also been said many times, because I think a lot of, shall we say, macho personalities have somewhat latched on to Kurt Cobain over the years. Kurt Cobain, actually a staunch feminist himself.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think a lot of people know that. It's not like the hot topic to talk about
exactly
when people are talking about Kurt Cobain. But, Kathleen was friends with him. Toby Vale, the drummer of Bikini Kill, was dating him. My friend Tammy Ray Carlin was friends with him. And these artists... they just know that they had their politics. They happened to be feminist politics, and they were all kind of in the same scene at the same time and motivated by the same politics. But, you get into Nirvana and Kurt Cobain, and it's just not the thing that you hear most about is his feminist politics.
That's
but
right.
He definitely had them.
Yeah, he's a fascinating character, obviously, unto himself. But Kathleen coming out of that whole scene and then starting Bikini Kill, and what a voice on Kathleen. Not only heard the sound of her voice, but also what she was saying in all those songs. And what's really interesting in the film is that she seems to be, kind of shaken at a certain point that everyone has applied what she sung about as if journalists, etc., as if those things were her story as opposed to her speaking about stories in general. And I find that a really, really fascinating thing, how the media can just say, oh, look, this is all her, Mm-hmm. Certainly something she struggled with, I think, at a certain point, to the point where the media, they had a media, I guess they called it a media blackout, right?
Yeah, they did. And yeah, I think that there is an assumption that when a singer is out there performing and their lyrics seem autobiographical, that, I'm guilty of the same thing. I hear singers singing about something and I just assume that they're singing about their own life. Mm-hmm. And I think that what we touch on in the documentary is that actually the topic that we're actually talking about here is a little bit more of a gray area than what it seems, Is there truth to Kathleen's lyrics about her father? I think that it was really important for her to say, my father did not rape me.
Right.
But that he was inappropriate. And then beyond that, you just have to respect an artist and what they're willing to say at any given time, what they're willing to put out there, and what their story is and their truth is at that time. I think because people are public, we demand that sometimes they give us answers that they don't even have yet, know. So it's a highly personal topic. And I think that in the 90s, when the media was just, completely blasting anything having to do with Kathleen, I think that she was such an enticing kind of character that they just wanted to talk about her in any way that they could. And, they found that really invasive and scary. And the result of that was just a media blackout. Like, if you're going to, say that this is my life or this is my story, then I'm just going to stop talking to you. And that's what they did.
Right. If you're going to get it all wrong, I'm just not talking to you.
Right.
Exactly. And that was the same thing. I think she got tagged a lot with as being specifically representative of Thirdwave feminism, as far as what she was doing specifically represented. It was what Kathleen always said was, and which everyone pretty much in Thirdwave feminism said, is that what makes this different now and the way people are thinking now is that it's that feminism is as different from person to person.
Absolutely.
It's individual. There's not, this is feminism.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the great messages, I think, of Kathleen, too.
Yeah, and it's something that, we still have to talk about all the time. And it's something that, unfortunately, is not really recognized still today. People want to know what makes a feminist, mm-hmm. What is feminism, and like you just said, it is individual, and individual experiences can speak to the feminist movement. Not one person can truly represent feminism. It's just, I understand that a desire to want to have that one person, but it just doesn't exist. And what's feminist for me may not be feminist for you, But also, we run into this when we're talking about a marginalized group of people. So as a marginalized group of people, when our stories finally get told, we want them to speak to us completely, and we want our own personal stories to be told. And hopefully this film is a motivator for people and for feminist artists to start telling their stories. But it isn't a film about Thirdwave feminism, and it isn't a film about Riot. It's a film about Kathleen Hanna, and she is a feminist, and she identified as a Riot Girl.
Right. And of course, after La Tigra, of course, had Bikini Kill always had a following. They sold some records on Kill Rockstar, stuff like that. But when La Tigre started, after the Julie Ruin event, when La Tigre started, that was like a big success a bigger success in terms of things were lined up a certain way for them. They were doing something quote unquote that latched on to more people musically and not just the message, but also musically latched on to a lot more people. And then, even with that success, all of a sudden she stopped. And I have to say, there's a clip in the film where she's at the Planned Parenthood rally in New York City, and I was there myself at the Planned Parenthood. We were 20 feet in front of her, in front of the podium, and I have to tell you, she says in that film, and I don't want to ruin too much about the film, but she says in the film that she, because of her how she was feeling, and of course later she'd find out what it was all about, but because of how she was feeling, she realized she couldn't speak properly. She felt like she was coming off as drunk, and I'm going to tell you that my wife and I actually said, "Oh, Kathleen Hanna looks like she's drunk up there." Absolutely true story. Really? Not knowing, the true situation, and it did look that way. And she's not exaggerating how she felt like she was coming off, because she was in fact coming off slightly like that, like she had a little buzz.
Yeah, but I was there. I was filming her that day at the Planned Parenthood rally. And before she went on with her speech, she was doing a couple of interviews with different people backstage and different blogs, and all of a sudden she started rubbing her ear a lot and then rubbing her jaw a lot, and I knew something was going on. As she was approaching the podium, I could tell that she was shaken up in a way that Kathleen actually doesn't get shaken up. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, after the rally was over, it was sometime after, but we find out that her hearing went out and her speech started to be slurred, and these are all symptoms of a much, much bigger problem that we discuss in the film, in a health crisis, in a diagnosis that she has now, and in a disease that she's fighting now. But yeah, it's interesting that she came off as drunk. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I just thought it was pretty amazing that she mentions that in the film, because that's what seemed at the time. So she wasn't just imagining how she was coming off.
Right. And Kathleen is probably the last person on the planet that you would see at a public event speaking drunk, right? A lot of other rock stars that we can leave that to. But
that'd be a different story, right? But yeah, so she ends Le Tigre, and she just says, because of the way she's feeling, that she just can't do this anymore. Her bandmates don't know about the real situation, although they know things are wrong. Of course, at this point, she's deep in her relationship with Adam Horovitz and of the Beastie Boys, and he doesn't even really know at that point. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated thing. So when we were making this film, when we were making the documentary, we spent about a year principal photography with Kathleen. Mm-hmm. And when we started the film, it was serious. We knew that Kathleen had serious health problems. She felt like she was dying and that they weren't going to figure out what it was. And about halfway through the filming, she finally got a diagnosis. Mm. So what happened in the interview, there was an interview in the film where she's by the fireplace and she gets really quiet. Right. And she's talking about leaving Le Tigre and what the reasons for that were. Now, it wasn't until we were actually filming the interview and not turning the camera off and just letting her process that whole situation that she actually came to the realization of why she actually stopped performing. Now, she had told her bandmates one thing, she had told her husband another thing, and the public another thing, that she had said everything that she needed to say, that she just wanted a break. And what happens in the film is she really comes to terms with the fact that what she didn't want to admit was that her body was telling her that she couldn't do this anymore.
Right.
And she didn't want to admit that. And so, I feel like that's a really special part of the film. She gets really, really vulnerable. She comes to those conclusions in that moment, and she digs really deep. And I think that's something that we see in that film that, that we're not going to see from Kathleen in your average interview,
It's amazing. So the interview itself at the time was almost, was cathartic right there.
It was.
It was really real and in the moment.
Very, very, very real, very in the moment, very trusting. I had my directors of photography that were there, and we'd be talking about a subject, whether it was her health or her relationship with her father, or what she thought what she thought of her own life, or what the story of her life was. And we would get quiet for a couple of minutes, and my directors of photography would be like, "Should we stop? Should we cut now?" Like she's obviously uncomfortable.
Right.
And I just said no.
Right.
I'm not afraid of this silence. I don't think Kathleen is afraid of this silence. And if we can just sit here and let her process this, we're going to get something that is cathartic, and that's what happened.
And that first of all, Kathleen always, came off in Bikini Kill back in those days as somebody hard on her sleeve, kind of a person, said exactly what she thought. But meanwhile, obviously she had that whole other self-protective thing, like shutting down the media, all those different kinds of things. Yet she wound up completely giving herself over to you as a filmmaker in the film, and being completely trusting and open. How did you first get involved in this project? What brought this about?
Kathleen and I have been friends for about 13 years, 14 years, and she approached me about, she was visiting me at work one day. I was working at a post-production house in Soho, and she just visited me there and asked if I had any interest in working on the Grrrl documentary, Who Took the Bump, which is really, really an awesome watch. For anybody who's out there, you should definitely check it out.
Yep.
It's about Grrrl on tour, and their last tour. At that time, what just struck me was, that I thought it was amazing that they were going to do a Grrrl on tour documentary. But I really was like, Kathleen, when are you going to tell your own personal story? Like, there's a lot of people out here that want to know what's behind the art. And that was kind of a terrifying idea to her at the moment. But I think it was a combination of things, her health being high up there on the list, that this was an opportunity for her to tell her story to somebody that she trusted. And she said, a couple of weeks later, she was like, I'm totally terrified, but I think that you're right. And if you make the film, I'll tell my story. And, and we started right away.
Okay. And she just seems like she was open and trusting throughout the entire thing. And obviously you guys are friends, but everybody else in the film also seems amazingly open. You had some magic touch there, I have to tell you, because everyone just comes off as open, trusting, comfortable speaking. It's just such a moving film because of that. How everyone is so, you're not pulling teeth out of anybody. Nobody's obfuscating anything. It's all right out there. Yeah. Was there a lot? Did you do a lot of editing in the film? How much?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a ton of editing. I'll just say that on the topic of the interviews, it was approached as these interviews were approached as conversations, right. Rather than a set idea of what I wanted people to say. I really wanted to talk with them about Kathleen and not be afraid of the answers and not be too set on what I thought the answer should be. So the interviews ended up taking turns depending on who I was interviewing that we couldn't have predicted in the beginning. It was wherever the conversation led us. And, with most of those people that I was interviewing, they're feminist artists. So that's how feminist art is made, and at least in my community, is to sit down without an agenda or without an expectation of the outcome, but to just be willing to see what happens. And as far as the editing is concerned, there was a lot of editing, and that's a really, really difficult process. There's a lot that was left out. That
I can imagine.
It was really special to me, but in the end, the film does its job. And
I can imagine that kind of interview, that type of material, must have been extremely difficult to edit down and still maintain the linear as you do. And it's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, Tamra Davis, who's one of the producers on the project, came in at the very end, and she was really, really helpful with that. She sat with my editor and just pushed and pushed and pushed. And, she was fantastic with that. She really blew through a lot of the archival footage in a way to get us to a finish line that we weren't at that point. It was a lot of teamwork happening there.
And just briefly, when you talk about the archival footage, you found tons of great footage of Bikini Kill, the spoken word stuff. The La Tigre was probably a little easier to find, but some of that early Bikini Kill stuff, absolutely amazing. How'd you get your hand? Was that all Kathleen stuff? Was that from different sources? What was the?
Kathleen had collected a lot of it because NYU has a archive called the Fails Archive.
Okay.
And it's an archive of downtown artists. And in that archive, Lisa Darms, one of the senior archivists, started a Riot Grrrl collection. So Kathleen started collecting all of this material for a couple of years before we started the film. So I got really lucky on that, in that way that Kathleen had, and her army of interns named Kate, there was a bunch of Kates, they had worked really hard in collecting a lot of that material. But I'll say that some of the most beautiful Bikini Kill footage that you see in the film comes from a filmmaker, Lucy Thane, in the UK. And she'd been holding on to this Bikini Kill footage for the last, 20, 25 years. It was not the easiest thing in the world to be able to get our hands on that footage. But Lucy finally agreed to let us use some of it. And so I'm really, really grateful to her for that. She has some great stuff online on Vimeo, just on Vimeo, Lucy Thane. And I think one of them is called Real Worse Than Queer. She's worse than queer. Another one is Bikini Kill Changed My Life. She has beautiful footage.
Oh, that's great. Because the source stuff was just fantastic, really. And it's very crisp, too, and everything was great. And that was also edited fantastically, because a lot of time you'd play a single audio take and mix the visual takes, and it just came out great. You edited it fantastically.
Yeah, Bobby Rad is a very talented editor. He did a fantastic job. Yeah,
absolutely. How's the movie been received? Very well, right? So far?
Yeah, I'm so grateful for the reception that it's had. I think just like at the beginning of our conversation, Kathleen means a lot to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, there's this whole demographic that's just really, really grateful that she told her story and that this documentary is out there in the world. And then there's a bunch of people that didn't even know who Kathleen was, who have seen the film and are, new fans. But yeah, it's being received really, really well. And, I feel really grateful. The reviews have been great, and people are seeing it. It makes me really excited.
Exactly. And you will be at the Cinema Arts Center in Huntington tomorrow evening, Wednesday.
So great.
And it should be extremely exciting, the screening there. It should be great. And there's nothing like seeing movies in general, but a movie like this with a soundtrack like it has in a theater. It's just absolutely. Like an amazing thing. And I'm always a big fan of that. Just as we did get in the station here, and we've been playing the Julie Ruin album that came out in, I think it was September, right? The most recent release that Kathleen did. How is she feeling now?
she appears to be doing really well. I know that she's out on tour with her new band, the Julie Ruin, and they're doing a bunch of dates. And I know that she's still in treatment, but she's a heck of a lot better than she was, and that's the best case scenario.
That's very good. So this Wednesday night, right at the Cinema Arts Center in Huntington, Sini Anderson will be joining us right there. And Sini, I just want to thank you for doing such a great job on this film. And best of luck on whatever happens with it. It is streaming different places. It's on the big screen tomorrow night right here in Huntington. Please catch it. It's a great film. Sini, thank you so much for joining us on Finn's Revolution on WUSB.
Thanks so much, Finn.
Great.